So I'm all exhausted today. I didn't sleep last night, but what's going on with me and all my health problems and all the problems I've had with providers and stuff like that is basically this, and that's that each provider seems to want to hone in on one of my health conditions without looking at the overall picture. And the truth is that from what I've found from dealing with people my whole life and studying psychology and so forth, is that people are more complex than that. There's usually not just one contributing factor to why somebody's sick or acts a certain way or does this or does that, but even psychologists sometimes overlook this, and counselors, and fall into the trap of it must just be one thing. Things cannot be this complex when they are. So they just are. Life is just complex. People are just complex. And a lot of the time we try to simplify it. Simplification makes people feel better. It makes me feel better. But in the long run, it only made my health issues worse. So what I'm going through now is I have dissociative identity disorder. I was diagnosed a couple years ago. And then a few years ago, my nephew, my identical twin sister's child, got diagnosed with autism. It must have been a couple years ago. I don't remember the exact date, but it started to peak at me because, and ADHD, because he had some of the same language delays that I had as a child and some of the same sort of sensory issues that I had. And then my niece also started to show signs and got diagnosed as developmentally delayed, language problems, and then also got diagnosed with autism. And as a child, my language delays were so bad that I was nonverbal up until past developmental age, and then had to go to speech therapy for a few years, was teased a lot, was in school counselor's office. There was a school counselor who threw around, terms for me like developmentally delayed autism and stuff, but then they decided that since I was identical twin and I was doing well in school, that couldn't be it because I seemed like such a normal child. And so I tried to get this autism ADD assessment through a neuropsychologist, and she looked at me and said, well, you seem to communicate so well. I don't think that you can have autism, and you have such severe PTSD that I don't really think that an assessment would show us any true results. So I didn't even get the assessment. So finally I saw a counselor a week and a half ago who didn't even do an assessment and just said, I think you're on the spectrum, and you seem to me to have ADD. And so that was good. The autism spectrum. So that was good, and it confirmed what I've been thinking. And also the fact that medications don't always work for me the way that they're supposed to, and sometimes do the exact opposite. So I've always had problems with medications. And then, so that happened. And so I talked to my psychiatrist today about this, and I was misdiagnosed with bipolar. He also agrees with the ADD diagnosis, after I told him the full story. And, I was put on bipolar meds thinking I was bipolar with this misdiagnosis, the series of misdiagnoses. And, so I was diagnosed bipolar and put on a lot of medications that cause language impairment, such as lamotrigine, oxcarbazepine, let's see, what else was I on? Topiramate, and then the antipsychotics I was on also caused cognitive delays and language delays, language problems for me. So I was on all these bipolar meds that were just continuing to cause severe language impairment for me when I already had it, and had even been through however long of speech therapy when I was a child. So over time, I just got more and more frustrated. I kept telling psychiatrists, this is the problem, this is the problem. I don't think it's bipolar. But because it was, these medications were impairing my ability to communicate, I never was able to get through to them. And finally, I started to I worked on my PTSD because my PTSD contributes to my language delays. And I got off the meds, and now I'm actually beginning to communicate again for the first time in, since I got put on those meds back in 2005. And people tell me, gosh, you're just so more communicative, blah, 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 you're so much more open. And I'm like, yeah, that's because I was, really put on the wrong medications. Now, they might have helped depression. I assume that they did because I do tend towards depression. But it's like they caused more depression than they helped in the long run because of the side effects for me. And then the other thing is, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis when I was 22, I think, a junior in college. And I got put on levothyroxine, and because I was still depressed, got put on an antidepressant, which actually is supposed to work for ADHD. It's supposed to cause weight loss. I had weight gain, but that could have just been the beginning of my thyroid disease because it happened at the same time. And I've continued to have problems with weight over time, even though I'm on levothyroxine. The medications I went on, the antipsychotics, only increase this because antipsychotics can imbalance hormones, and I already have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune disease that attacks your thyroid and imbalances your hormones. So then I had all this weight gain. So then I'm talking to the naturopath psychiatrist and the naturopath, and I talked to my counselor too because she also knows about autoimmune diseases, and they all think that, I've never been on the right medication. Even if levothyroxine kept me within normal ranges, it was on the outskirts of normal ranges, and that for some people, symptoms need to be treated, not just blood levels. And I've been thinking and trying to say this to providers for years, and finally I got through to them because I persevered. And then, so now we're going to try, different medications than levothyroxine, but basically my blood levels have been under control since, 16 years, but the symptoms have not, of Hashimoto's thyroiditis, so it's been frustrating. So then they're telling me, like, you're so strong, you're such a trooper, blah, 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 you like to figure things out, and I'm like, well, yeah, that's a symptom of autism, and it actually drives me quite crazy, and sometimes it causes huge amounts of hardship in my life, but apparently, for me, I finally got to the bottom of all this health jumble, just my health is just so overly complicated with misdiagnoses, but that autism helped me to actually figure it out on my own with the help of doctors and psychiatrists, but I was ultimately the one that did it. So, autism, good and bad, and I talked to my Aunt Julie about it, and she said that there are places like Microsoft that have outreach for trying to hire people with autism because we have special skill sets that other people do not have. Apparently my inclination to figure out very complex problems, because I am in essence a complex problem, apparently can be very beneficial. Same with the master's degree I got in experimental psychology, figuring out complex problems. I did very well in experimental psychology and in research. So, the counselor I saw said that actually experimental psychology is a very good field for someone with autism. So it's very interesting that I was on the right path for a long time, got put on the wrong medications, never got that PhD in experimental psychology that I wanted. Now, it turns out that the software field tends to sometimes employ experimental psychologists as data scientists. So, I'm hoping that, I don't know if I would just want to work at home or what I'd want to do, but possibly I could, I don't know, maybe work again. I'm on Social Security right now because of all this, but possibly, I'm very good at math, very good at inferential statistics, so very good at looking at, as I said, complex problems and finding a solution. Or, well, inferential statistics, it's not quite a solution. It's more complex than that, but I won't go into that. Anyways, so that is my story. So, no sleep last night, probably due to my thyroid imbalance. So when I have these nights of rest, so sometimes I can't figure out why it is, and then I need to talk to somebody to ground me a little bit, and then I'll sort of figure it out, this is most likely due to my thyroid, and also because I'm still kind of reeling from coming off the meds that caused me so many issues, and my mind's kind of trying to reorganize itself. Because if it caused that many cognitive issues for me, then my brain must just be going you know, my brain is probably just, we'll just say, out of, you know, not regulated. Stuff is probably going into my brain that's, yeah, it's just causing my brain problems. So, anyways, because, you know, language issues in the brain, like, there are certain, anyways. Not going to go to the brain, not going to go into neuroscience right now. I could, but I'll choose not to. That's one of my, apparently, the counselor said that my little area of expertise is things like neuroscience, areas of psychology, things like that. So, anyways, it's hard for me not to diverge into those topics. So, lots of distractibility right now as I'm starting to lose focus, so I'll get off here. But, yeah. And just one more thing is that my story with having complex illnesses and being a complex person is actually pretty typical. I had some therapy that's helped me to accept that I am a complex person, and that helped me a lot as well. So, anyways, okay, thank you.